Hi there, today we're talking about the GH5 and if it's still worth buying this camera after 5 years. My name is... The GH5 has been my workhorse for the past 5 years or so. Only a couple of months ago, only about 6 months ago, I bought a C200 to replace this camera. But I still have two of these and I use them on a daily basis. Strategate is an amazing camera. It has a lot of features, a lot of great potential, and it does a lot of things really well. So I wanted to talk to you about it, the pros and cons of this camera, and the things that this camera has that still stands today, and one of the reasons what I like so much about it, but things that you should also bear in mind depending on the type of production you make. So things that I like about this camera. The 4K 10-bit is by far my favorite feature in this camera that actually the C200 doesn't have. C200 shoots in 4K 8-bit and then RAW 12. I wish there was a MP4 10-bit into the C200, but it doesn't have, but this camera does, which is incredible. Another amazing feature is the recording time. There's no recording limits in this camera. Therefore, I bought two of these because I was doing a lot of long style interviews, events, podcasts, and things like that, which I needed just ongoing recording as long as possible. So having a camera that doesn't have that 30-minute stop was such a major thing for me. So depending on what type of production you make, that might be something that's very valuable for you as well. And going along with that, it has dual SD card, which has always been incredible. It has different settings. You can either duplicate the file you're creating for extra safety, or you can make from once one card is full to start recording to the other. Something that's really great is that if the camera is recording, even if the card gets full, it starts recording the next one without stopping the file. So as long as you have battery and memory card in this thing, you never stop recording. Full HDMI. I really don't like these new cameras with all different sizes of HDMI because you can never find it anywhere. A full-size HDMI is everywhere. It's on your TV, is in every cable, every shop, anywhere you can find a full HDMI. Another thing, the battery life. The actual Panasonic battery life are really great batteries. They last a long time, they worked really well. Plus is the flip out screen. Is a really nice 360 flip out screen, which is great not just if you're filming yourself, but also for if you're getting low shots or anything like that. You can see a lot better and you can always kind of maneuver that a little bit around. Nice touch screen as well, which has always been a great plus. You have the custom settings on top. You have C1, C2, and C3. On C3, I think you can have still another 3 settings. So it's such a great thing that you can have your default settings kind of presetted into it. And those are the things that I really enjoy about this camera. Some of the downside here is, first of all, the sensor size is a macro forward third. It's a camera that doesn't take a lot of light. So that tends to be a downside if you're shooting things like music videos, anything at night, depending on the type of documentary or event you're doing. If it's not well lit, it's something that can really be a downside. I wish this was a bigger monitor. I know a lot of DSLRs and things like that, those are not very big in general, and you can always add an extra monitor to it, but in general, I wish this was a little better. Third thing, autofocus. They have improved the autofocus on this. I'm using autofocus right now and I think it's working pretty well, but I'm not moving a lot. But this camera has always struggled with autofocus. Because I used this camera for so long, I never really relied on autofocus. I learned to manual focus really well. But now that I have the C200 and C200 has amazing autofocus, I realized what I've been missing for all this time. And I wish this had it. This is one of the downsides where now in 2021, this camera kind of falls back a little bit for me. But if autofocus is not the thing for you, this camera might be ideal. In terms of the ergonomics of the camera, I really like where the buttons are placed. I really like the dial in here. I really like you have a little joystick. Over here, you have your top buttons. Something I really appreciate is how you have a record button over here, but you can also press the trigger and that records. I really feel like the GH5 was a camera made with filmmaking in mind. They were primarily photography cameras, but I always felt like the GH5 always had a more lean towards filmmaking. I've never used this camera to shoot any photos. I'm not a photographer myself, but even when I do photography, I'll usually go for a Canon 6D or something else. I have 2 of these cameras and I have never really taken a picture with this, just because I always felt like this was such a strong video camera. It doesn't even cross my mind to really turn this into photography. I do think this camera is worth buying now. I think it has great settings. It's still in that world where we're in between HD and 4K. This camera has amazing 4K and really good HD, so you're not going to be missing out on having lower quality. Obviously, if you're in the market for something along these lines, there are different cameras now with different settings, but something that I found is that most people tend to follow what's popular out there. I always found that what's popular is the generic look that everybody has. So choosing a camera that is great, has great settings, has great ergonomics, has great workflow, and works really well, but it's not what everybody else is using, will give you a slightly different look, a slightly different feel. I always found that making sure I have what I like and what works for me was more important than just doing what the neighbor is doing, you know. This is being recorded on the GH5 as well. I thought it would be interesting because I have 2 of them to show you one, but I also record on the other. This is being shot in HD, so this is not the full quality of the camera, but this camera is capable of amazing footage. If you're in a market for it, because this camera is now almost 5 years old, I believe, you might be able to find this for a really decent price, and it does really amazing images. Never really met someone that used this camera and didn't like it. I know it's a downer that this doesn't have a full sensor. If you want this camera with a full sensor, I believe the Panasonic S1 is pretty much that. It's basically this camera with a better sensor, and for that you're looking at a lot more money, and that kind of budget I wouldn't really go for a S1. I would go for a cinema camera really. But that's it. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a good day. A good day. I say goodbye.